The first mistake was thinking a drunken swipe meant nothing. The second was realizing the stranger from that late-night app chat now stood in front of me, wearing a company badge and holding out his hand like fate had decided to screw with me personally. His name was Lucas. Smooth voice, iron suit, eyes too sharp to forget. I told myself that night online was no thing, a handful of reckless words, a flirtation I'd never admit out loud. But seeing him there in the office, real, unavoidable, made my chest tighten in ways I couldn't disguise. I forced my hand into his, gripping firmly, like that would erase the fact that I knew the exact shape of his laugh in the dark. The words he typed when he thought no one would judge him. Ethan, right? His lips curved slightly, teasing, almost daring me. I nodded, throat dry. Yeah. Welcome to the team. The room spun in cruel irony. Of all the people in New York City, of all the endless faces on dating apps, why him? Why here? He didn't look fazed, but I caught the faint twitch at the corner of his mouth, the same smirk I'd seen on my screen at 2 a.m. when he asked if I was really the kind of guy who played it safe all the time. Back then, I'd lied. Now, standing 2 feet apart in an open office filled with chatter and fluorescent lights, the lie weighed heavier. Our office wasn't glamorous, an advertising firm running on too much coffee and too little time, but the first week with Lucas felt like working inside a pressure cooker. Every brainstorming session turned into a silent duel. Every glance across the conference table burned with unsaid words. He was infuriatingly good at his job, quick with ideas, charming in a way that made clients lean in too close. And yet, when the meetings ended and the laughter faded, his eyes always found mine, lingering a beat too long. The worst part, I wanted him to. At night, I caught myself staring at my phone, scrolling back to our chat history. The reckless jokes, the daring suggestions, the heat I'd let myself feel when I thought he was a stranger. Words typed without consequence now carried weight. I remembered how he said he hated small talk, how he liked honesty even if it cut deep, how he wanted to meet someone who wouldn't hide. And here I was, hiding. One evening, after a brutal client presentation, the office finally emptied out. I stayed late, pretending to polish slides, though in truth I was just waiting for my heartbeat to slow. The hum of the AC filled the silence. Then came footsteps. I didn't have to turn. I knew it was him. "You work too much," Lucas said, his voice softer now, stripped of the confident edge he carried in daylight. I managed a laugh. "Says the guy who's still here." He leaned against the desk, close enough that I caught the faint scent of cologne. Not overpowering. Just enough to pull me back to that night when his words felt like fingertips brushing across my chest. "I wasn't sure if you'd remember me," he murmured. My breath caught. The game was over. The pretense shattered. I met his gaze, steady but trembling inside. How could I forget? For a moment, the world held its breath. Just the two of us in an empty office, bound by the ghost of a night we'd both pretended didn't matter. His eyes softened, and for the first time since we met in daylight, Lucas looked vulnerable. The truth is, I wasn't ready for this. For him. I'd spent years building walls, jokes, work, distractions, anything to avoid the raw mess of wanting someone I couldn't have. Lucas was dangerous, not because of who he was, but because he made me want to stop hiding. And in America, in this city that promised freedom but still whispered judgment, that was terrifying. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You've been avoiding me." I swallowed hard. "You make it hard not to." A slow smile tugged at his lips, not mocking this time, but tender, almost relieved. "Good," he whispered. Something broke in me then. The silence stretched, the tension thick enough to choke on. I could have pushed him away, walked out, pretended again. But I didn't. I let myself want him. And in the dim glow of computer screens, under the weight of every risk we weren't supposed to take, Lucas leaned in, his breath brushing mine, daring me to finally choose honesty. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of what almost happened, but because of what didn't. The kiss lingered in the air, suspended like a promise, unfinished. He left with a half smile, and I sat alone, restless, replaying every second. By morning, the world was back to normal, or at least it pretended to be. But normal couldn't erase the truth. And the truth was this: I didn't just want Lucas. I needed to know who he was beyond the suit, beyond the smirk, beyond the app. And maybe, just maybe, he needed me too. The next morning, I walked into the office with the weight of an unfinished kiss pressing against my lips. It was almost funny how everything looked the same: the cluttered desks, the stale smell of burnt coffee, the endless hum of chatter. But nothing felt the same. Lucas was already there. He stood near the coffee machine, talking with a couple of coworkers, his laugh ringing sharp and effortless. To anyone else, he looked untouchable, confident, perfectly pressed, the kind of man who never second-guessed himself. But when his eyes flicked over to me, just for a fraction of a second, everything tightened. The space between us crackled with memory. I pretended not to notice. That was safer. Morning, I muttered, heading straight for my desk, clutching my laptop bag like it was a shield. But safety is a lie. Because the moment I sat down, my phone buzzed. A message, hidden beneath the glow of the screen. Lucas, you didn't sleep either, did you? My pulse spiked. I glanced up. He was still chatting with the others, face unreadable, like he hadn't just shattered the fragile wall I'd been trying to rebuild. I typed back before my brain could stop me. Ethan, not a minute. The dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Lucas, we need to talk. The chance came faster than I wanted. Our manager pulled the two of us into a new project, something high stakes, demanding late nights and early mornings. The kind of assignment that would normally thrill me. Except now it meant being tethered to Lucas, trapped in glass-walled meeting rooms where every stolen glance, every accidental brush of his hand against mine, became a silent battle. At first, I thought I could keep it professional. Hide behind PowerPoints, keep my eyes on the numbers, pretend the magnetic pull wasn't tearing me apart. But Lucas didn't play by those rules. One night, long after everyone else left, we sat across from each other, papers spread across the table, the city lights casting shadows across his face. You're quiet, he said. I'm working. I lied. He leaned back, arms crossing, eyes never leaving mine. You're hiding. I clenched my jaw. From what? From me. The air froze. My throat went dry. I wanted to deny it, laugh it off, push him away. But my silence betrayed me. Lucas's gaze softened. Just a little. You think too much, Ethan. You always have. That night, you let go. For once, you were real. And now you're pretending it didn't happen. I slammed my pen down. Because it can't happen. We work together. People talk. This city hell. This industriate eats people alive for less. His expression shifted. A flicker of hurt breaking through his armor. So what? You'd rather suffocate than take a risk. I hated how well he knew me. Hated that he was right. But more than anything, I hated how badly I wanted to risk it all. Days turned into weeks, each one a delicate dance. In meetings, we sparred like rivals, ideas clashing sharp and fast. Our colleagues calling it good chemistry. They didn't know the truth that every argument was a disguise for something burning deeper. At lunch breaks, he'd sit across from me, casually asking about my weekend while his foot brushed mine under the table. A secret touch no one else could see. At night, I'd lie awake, replaying his words, his glances, the way he seemed to peel back layers of me I'd kept hidden for years. But the fear never left. Fear of exposure. Fear of being seen too clearly. Fear that wanting him made me reckless. One Friday, after another endless week, the team went out for drinks. The bar was loud, filled with clinking glasses and half-shouted stories. I tried to lose myself in the noise, in the comfort of colleagues laughing too hard at dumb jokes. But then Lucas slid into the seat beside me, his thigh pressed against mine, his cologne cutting through the haze of beer and smoke. "You're avoiding me again," he whispered, low enough for only me to hear. I forced a laugh, tipping my glass back. Maybe I just like my space. He leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing my ear. "Liar." My skin burned. Couldn't breathe. Around us, no one noticed. But inside, the world tilted. I turned, meeting his eyes. For once, I didn't look away. "Stop pushing." He smirked, but there was no malice in it. Only something raw, something vulnerable. "Then pull me instead." The words lodged in my chest. Dangerous. Reckless. True. Later that night, after too many drinks and too much tension, I stepped outside to clear my head. The city air was sharp, cold enough to bite. And there he was, following me out, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes searching mine like he was tired of games. We stood in silence, the street buzzing around us, taxis blaring, strangers rushing past. For a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in New York. "Ethan," he said softly, "I don't care if it's messy. I don't care if it's hard. I just don't want to pretend I don't want you." Something in me cracked. The walls I'd built, the excuses I clung to, all of it crumbled in the face of his honesty. And before I could stop myself, I reached for him. Our lips met, fierce and desperate, the kind of kiss that felt like falling and flying at once. Years of denial melted into heat, into truth, into the terrifying relief of finally being seen. When we pulled apart, breathless, the world hadn't ended. The city still roared. The lights still burned. But everything inside me was different. Lucas pressed his forehead against mine, whispering, "See, the world didn't collapse." I laughed, shaky and real. Not yet. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The first real kiss should have felt like relief. Instead, felt like a curse. I couldn't stop thinking about the way Lucas had pulled me in. The honesty in his voice, the fire in his touch. It was everything I'd secretly wanted. And it scared the hell out of me. On Monday morning, I walked into the office and pretended nothing had happened. But the truth lived in my body, alive in my chest every time I looked at him. My coworkers didn't notice. They were too busy complaining about deadlines and weekend hangovers. But Lucas noticed. Of course he did. He leaned against the corner of my desk, coffee in hand, giving me that knowing smirk that made my skin heat. "Rough weekend?" he asked. I didn't look up. Just tired. He hummed, too amused. "Funny. I thought you'd look more rested after finally getting something off your chest." My heart jumped. I shot him a glare, desperate for him to stop, but he only chuckled under his breath, slipping back toward his office. He left me with the burn of his words and the suffocating fear that someone might have overheard. The project we worked on together only made things worse. Long nights, shared spaces, stolen glances. It was like walking a tightrope, every moment charged with tension. Every word an almost confession. One night, I snapped. We were reviewing campaign drafts, exhaustion making the edges of my patience sharp. He was too close, leaning over my chair to point at something on my screen. The smell of his cologne, the warmth of his body, it was unbearable. "Do you have to stand that close?" I hissed. Lucas froze, then leaned back just enough to meet my eyes. His expression wasn't angry. It was calm. Too calm. "You don't actually want me to move," he said quietly. The worst part was, he was right. I shoved my chair back, standing so fast it startled us both. "This can't happen. Lucas. Not here. Not like this." He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he refused to stop solving. "Then tell me you don't want it to happen at all." I opened my mouth. The words wouldn't come, and he smiled, not smug, but soft, like he'd just uncovered the truth I was desperate to bury. The universe decided to test me the following week. Our manager, Diane, announced that Lucas and I would be leading the final pitch for the client. High stakes, high visibility. Failure wasn't an option. The whole team clapped, congratulated us, cheered about how we were the dream duo. If only they knew. If only they could see the undercurrent, the way our hands brushed when we passed documents, the way our eyes met and lingered, the way my chest ached every time I forced myself to stay quiet. But it wasn't just my coworkers I was afraid of. It was myself. Because the deeper I let Lucas in, the harder it would be to let him go. One evening, after another brutal rehearsal, I stayed behind in the conference room, staring at the glowing city through the glass. My reflection looked hollow, a man split between desire and fear. "Ethan." Lucas's voice broke the silence. I turned. He was standing by the door, his tie loose, his hair slightly mussed, looking less like the polished coworker everyone admired and more like the man I'd kissed under the city lights. "You can't keep running from this," he said simply. I laughed bitterly. "And what do you suggest? That we hold hands at work? That we risk everything we've built just to be honest?" He interrupted. His voice wasn't sharp. It was steady. "With yourself. With me." I shook my head, throat tight. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." He took a step closer, eyes never leaving mine. "You want me. I want you. That's the truth. Everything else, fear, rules, what people will say, that's noise. And I don't want to live my life drowning in noise." His words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. But all I could say was, "And if the noise ruins us?" Lucas paused, then gave me a small, almost broken smile. "Then at least we'll know it was real." For days, his words haunted me. They followed me through every meeting, every elevator ride, every restless night. Real. I hadn't allowed myself to want something real in years. Growing up, I learned quickly that being myself came at a price. High school hallways filled with whispers. College friends who joked too loudly when they caught me staring too long. Parents who never said anything cruel, but whose silence weighed heavier than words ever could. So I learned to play it safe. Keep my head down. Want without touching. Dream without acting. But Lucas, He didn't just want to break those rules. He wanted to burn them, and I was terrified he'd burn me with them. The night before the final pitch, I couldn't focus. My apartment was a mess of half-written notes and empty coffee cups. But all I could see was his face. All I could hear was his voice. Finally, I gave up and texted him. "Ethan, are you awake?" The reply came instantly. "Lucas, always. Come over." I shouldn't have gone. But I did. His apartment was warm, dimly lit, filled with books and records and little pieces of a life he'd never shared at work. He opened the door barefoot, in a worn t-shirt, and for the first time, he looked human. Not a coworker. Not a stranger from an app. Just Lucas. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. I let him kiss me again. Deeper this time. Without hesitation. I let him hold me like he'd been waiting forever. And when I finally fell asleep in his arms, for the first time in years, I felt safe. But safety is fragile. The next morning, the world reminded me of that. We nailed the pitch. The clients loved us. Diane praised us in front of everyone, saying we were the perfect team. The office buzzed with excitement. And yet, in the middle of that celebration, I caught a coworker's glance. A lingering look. A curious smile. The kind of look that said, "I've noticed something." My stomach dropped. The noise was already starting, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to survive it. Rumors move faster than truth. It started small half-heard jokes in the break room. Coworkers teasing about how Lucas and I were joined at the hip. At first, I laughed it off. It was harmless, just office banter. But then the whispers grew sharper. Lingering glances followed us down hallways. Someone made a comment about how we always stayed late together. Another joked about how we argued like an old married couple. I pretended it didn't matter. Pretended I didn't hear the chuckles when I walked past, or the way conversations cut short when I entered the room. But every word burrowed deep, and Lucas noticed. One afternoon, after a tense meeting, he cornered me in the supply closet of all place low light, the faint smell of cardboard and toner filling the air. "You're shutting down again," he said quietly, blocking the door with his frame. I shoved a folder into my bag. "I'm fine." "You're lying." I snapped my head up, anger bubbling over. "What do you want me to say, Lucas? That I don't hear them? That I don't see the way they look at us?" His eyes softened, but his voice stayed steady. "Then let them look." I laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You don't care what they think." "You're wrong." He stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm, grounding me even as I tried to pull away. "Of course I care. But not enough to let them scare me out of something real." Something real. The words cut too close. That night, I couldn't escape the noise. My phone buzzed with messages from old college friends I hadn't spoken to in months. Someone had apparently seen us together at the bar last weekend and thought it was funny enough to gossip about. "Didn't know you were into coworkers. Man, risky move. Careful before it blows up in your face." The screen blurred. My chest felt heavy. It wasn't just the office anymore. The world was watching. When Lucas called, I didn't pick up. The next day, our manager assigned us to work in separate groups for a new client. It should have been a relief, but the distance felt worse. I caught him staring at me across the room, frustration plain in his eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to meet his gaze. By lunchtime, he'd had enough. He followed me outside, grabbing my wrist as I tried to walk past the busy sidewalk cafe. "Talk to me," he demanded. Pulled away, heat rising in my face. There's nothing to talk about. Bullshit. His voice was sharp, but underneath it, I heard the hurt. You're scared. Fine. But don't pretend I don't matter to you. I froze. Because he did matter. Too much. And that was exactly the problem. Lucas, I said softly, the city noise drowning around us. If this gets out, could ruin everything. Our jobs. Our reputations. He cut me off. You think love is less important than a paycheck. The word hung between us. Love. I stared at him, heart pounding. Don't say that. Why not? His voice cracked, just slightly. Because it's true. I had no answer. Only silence. That silence stretched over the next week. We spoke only when we had to. Kept everything surface level. But the distance didn't make things easier. It made me restless, sleepless, hollow. Every time he laughed in a meeting, I felt the ache of not being part of it. Every time someone else leaned close to him, I felt jealousy claw up my throat. And every night, I replayed his words, you think love is less important than a paycheck. I wanted to believe I was right, that I was protecting us both. But in the quiet of my apartment, surrounded by the mess of my thoughts, I wondered if I was just a coward. The breaking point came during a client dinner. The restaurant was loud, fancy, filled with clinking glasses and forced smiles. Lucas sat across the table, his tie perfect, his posture relaxed, playing the role of the charming executive. Our coworkers adored him. Clients leaned in to hear his every word. And I couldn't look away. He caught me staring once, twice, and finally, when the laughter swelled loud enough to cover us, let his hand brush mine under the table. Just a fraction of a second. Just enough to remind me he was still there. The world narrowed to that touch. I should have pulled back. But I didn't. And that's when I realized, no matter how much I tried to fight it, Lucas wasn't just a mistake, or a risk, or a fleeting want. He was the thing I'd been afraid to admit I needed. Later that night, when the dinner ended and we stepped into the cool air outside, I finally cracked. Come with me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He blinked, surprised, but didn't hesitate. We ended up at my apartment, the city buzzing outside the window as I paced the floor, words tumbling out. I can't keep doing this. I confessed, voice shaking. The hiding, the fear, the pretending I don't care when I do. But I don't know how to survive it if everyone finds out. Lucas listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When I finally stopped, breathless, he crossed the room and cupped my face in his hands. Then don't survive it alone, he said softly. And just like that, the weight I'd been carrying shifted. Not gone, but lighter. Because maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't have to face it alone. But the world doesn't hand out happy endings so easily. The next morning, a coworker stopped me in the hallway with a too sweet smile. So, Ethan, you and Lucas seem close. Anything you want to share? My stomach dropped. The noise was louder now, and I knew the storm was only beginning. Ethan stood at the edge of the rooftop, the wind whipping his shirt against his skin, his phone buzzing endlessly in his pocket. Down below, the city sprawled out in glowing rivers of traffic and neon, humming with life. He had never felt smaller, never felt more like disappearing into the night sky would be easier than facing the wreckage he had caused. But then behind him the door creaked open. Don't you dare take one more step. Adrian's voice cracked, raw with desperation. Don't you dare. Ethan froze. He didn't turn around. He didn't have to. He could hear Adrian's chest heaving, could almost feel the trembling anger and fear spilling out of him. I ruined everything, Ethan whispered, his throat tight. You were right. I should have told the truth sooner. About me. About us. About everything. Now they all know. And his voice broke, swallowed by the wind. Adrian's footsteps were heavy against the concrete as he came closer, each one filled with fury and something far more fragile. When he finally spoke, his words were softer than Ethan expected. You think I care about them? About the office gossip? About the whispers? Screw them, Ethan. Care about you. Ethan shook his head, finally turning to face him, tears catching in the streetlight glow. You don't understand. My whole life I've been running hiding, pretending to be someone else because I thought it was safer. But now I dragged you into it, and it's not fair. You deserve better than a man who can't even stand in the open. Adrian's eyes glistened, pain flashing in them, but his voice was steady. You think you're the only one who's scared. You think I wasn't terrified the first time I kissed you, wondering if it would blow up in my face. But Ethan, when I'm with you, feels like finally breathing. Like maybe I don't have to keep pretending, either. The rooftop air grew thick between them, fragile yet electric. Ethan's chest rose and fell as he searched Adrian's face for a sign that this wasn't another fleeting dream. That it wasn't just something beautiful destined to break apart under the weight of reality. And then Adrian closed the space between them. He didn't ask permission. He didn't hesitate. He just wrapped his hand around Ethan's neck and kissed him like he was saving both of their lives. The city roared beneath them. But up here on this forgotten rooftop it was just the two of them, clinging to something fragile, something powerful, something real. When they broke apart, Ethan's lips trembled against Adrian's. I don't know if I can be brave enough. Adrian pressed his forehead against his. Then let me be brave for both of us. For as long as it takes. The days that followed weren't easy. Whispers at the office spread like wildfire. Some colleagues smiled politely but avoided them. Others sneered, muttering words Ethan had feared hearing his whole life. For the first time, Ethan realized that the battle wasn't about being discovered, it was about deciding if love was worth standing in the light for. And Adrian stood. Every damn day, he stood. When Ethan's hands shook in the elevator, Adrian reached for them without shame. When a snide comment landed across the conference table, Adrian's glare silenced it. And when Ethan started to spiral again, thinking of resigning, of disappearing, Adrian only shook his head. You walk away now, he said one night, voice low and steady. You're not just walking away from this job. You're walking away from us. And I'm not letting that happen. Something in Ethan broke then. Or maybe something finally healed. Weeks later, on a warm Friday evening, Ethan found himself standing in the office after hours. Everyone had gone, the city lights winking beyond the glass walls. Adrian leaned against a desk, sleeves rolled up, tie undone, looking both exhausted and heartbreakingly beautiful. Ethan walked up to him, heart pounding. For once, there was no hesitation, no fear. He just reached for Adrian's hand and held it tight. You were right, Ethan said softly. I spent so long thinking love was supposed to be safe, hidden. But it's not. It's terrifying. And it's the bravest thing I've ever done. Adrian tilted his head, a slow smile tugging at his lips. And Ethan's breath caught as he pulled him closer. And I'm done hiding. Their lips met again, this time without fear, without weight, without the shadows of the past. Just two men, scarred and imperfect, choosing to stand in the light together. Months later, on a sunny morning in Central Park, Ethan watched Adrian laugh over coffee, sunlight catching in his hair. He realized something simple, something profound. Adrian hadn't just been the man he met on an app, or the new coworker who upended his life. Adrian had become home. And for the first time in his life, Ethan didn't want to run anymore. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.